name of God, the most beneficent, the most merciful. When you look around yourself, you see the stories of human greatness everywhere. This audiovisual amphitheater system that was built by layering bricks upon bricks. This great institution that was established by a great visionary leader. Aeroplanes and aerial machines that defy the laws of physics. Computers and internet technology that work like magic. Great innovations resulting from greater institutions that led the greatest revolutions. It's unbelievable that normal people who walk like us and who talk like us could accomplish such great feats of human engineering and development. So there must have been extraordinary human beings who innovated, who thinked, who created, who developed and took humanity to the great feats of development. This book is a tribute to such great personalities. The fountainhead. I say this book is fantastic. It's fabulous. It's fun. It's amazing. It's astounding. It's astronomically beyond my comprehension. I say this book is legendary because of two main reasons. One, because of the fact that Ayn Rand, when she wrote this book, it was ready for publication, but it was denied publication by 12 different publishers. Once it was published, it became a bestseller, selling millions and millions of copies. That's how this book became legendary. The second reason why this book is legendary is because it was written by legend herself. Her name is Ayn Rand. As you all know, Ayn Rand is a Russian-American philosopher. She's a Russian-American philosopher. She was born to a middle-class Jewish Russian family in St. Petersburg in 1905. She was born to a country which was ruled by communism. It was ruled by Lenin. She saw communism, she witnessed communism, and she hated communism. Given her personality, Ayn Rand knew that she could never survive in a communist country. For her, communism was oppressive, communism was oppressive. So her family got together and they sent her to the United States of America. And in America, she came with an empty pocket. She came with an empty pocket and she took a job as a scriptwriter in Hollywood. As you all know, Hollywood, the big film industry, she began working there. She began to write scripts. And finally, in 1943, she wrote a book. A book that catapulted her to the heights of fame. The book's name is The Fountainhead. The Fountainhead. And after this book was published, she became extremely famous. She became extremely wealthy due to the fact that this book ignited a revolution. A big philosophical revolution called subjectivism. And soon after her death, since she was so influential, this led to the establishment of an institute called as Ayn Rand Institute, which aims at propagating and preaching the philosophy of objectivism. Now, let's look at this book. As I said earlier, this book was denied publication by 12 publishers. And after it became published, it became a bestseller, selling millions and millions of copies. Even though these many years have been finished, annually it's been sold more than 100,000 copies. So this book is extremely influential. Now, I committed a mistake while reading this book. The main mistake was that this book is a philosophy. When you read this book, you should actually take your time. You should finish reading this book within 5 months. But I read it in 1 month. So therefore, to actually grasp the concepts, to actually understand what objectivism is, I have to reread it again. Now, let's look at the storyline. The story is about the main protagonist, the main character. It's Howard Rock. Howard Rock is the main person. The whole story revolves around Howard Rock. Now, the speciality of Howard Rock is beyond amazing. It's beyond amazing. Ayn Rand portrays Howard Rock as the ideal man. Let's go to the storyline. Howard Rock is a young student in a university, in a very esteemed university. He's a student of architecture. He's an exceptionally good student. He aces. He gets full marks at all subjects related to architecture. But that's not it. If you're studying psychology, you have subfields such as physiology and statistics. You have to study both of them. Similarly, when you're studying architecture, you have to study archaeology and mathematics. But Ayn Rand refused to study those. Howard Rock refused to study those. Howard Rock said that I came here to study architecture, not archaeology. Now since he utterly failed at these subjects, the professor of the university called him to his office and he said, "Rock, look at your stupid marks." He insulted Rock. And Rock replied legendarily by saying that I came here to this university to study architecture and not archaeology. I came to this university to study architecture and not mathematics. And I have studied those. Howard Rock stands up against the system. Have you ever thought of the system? Why do you learn the system? Why do you decide to be enslaved by the system? He stands up against the system. He stands up against his own teacher and he says, I came here to study architecture, not archaeology and mathematics, and he gets out of the university without his certificates. Now, Howard Rock is extremely skilled, but he does not have a certificate. Sadly, in the system, if you do not have a certificate for a skill, that means you do not have a skill. That's a big problem. That's an extremely big problem. There's no authentication for your skill. Now Howard Rock, even though he went to an esteemed university, even though he's an amazing architect, he gets out of the university without having any certificates. He goes out to the job market, he does not get any job, he goes to work in a quarry, he works manually, does physical jobs, and finally he sets up his own business, entrepreneurship. In entrepreneurship, customers came to him to build buildings, but Howard Rock refused. He again goes against the system. He says that I will build buildings according to my own thoughts and principles. I believe that buildings have personalities and I will give them the personality that I choose. But the customers refused. They say that we are the customers, we are the kings. You should build the buildings according to what we say. But Howard Rock, because he's against the system, he's a man of principle. He practices what he preaches. He says that if you do not allow me to build buildings according to my principles, I will not build them. You actually see there's a big message here, going against the system. Now next, Howard Rock becomes an utter failure in the world of architecture. Everyone sees him as failure. Even though after this, he builds big buildings, but no one notices. No one notices. As you see, if you read this book, it's very small, 753 pages. If you read it, it's an extremely good book. You know, you have to read it to understand it. Yeah? And if you read the book, you see that Howard Rock, as he goes through his life, he witnesses everything that happens to him against himself. Meaning that everything that happens in his life, everyone who surrounds him goes against him. Howard Rock, the main character of the story is Howard Rock. The other characters are Dominic Franken, Johnson, Ellsworth Thuhi. All these characters goes against Howard Rock, even though he's under such social pressure. Even though he's under such social pressure, he still refuses to compromise on his principle. You know, have you ever asked yourself, why do I need to study all these subfields? Have you ever thought that? You know, Howard Rock, he came there to study architecture. He studied architecture and got out of the university. I don't know if I should say this, but in the physiology class, I used to debate with my physiology teacher on, I should probably not say this because my mother is in the audience. I used to debate with my physiology teacher, and one day I got out of the class because I got so utterly disappointed on the system. Now, Howard Rock, because he was against the system, everyone hated him. Every single person around him hated him. They despised him, they insulted him, because he was against the system. There's a big message. If you go against the system, you will need to meet certain challenges. And that's exactly what happened to Rock. Now, as the story ends, almost in the 657th page, Howard Rock starts becoming successful. How? Because he was so real that people started noticing his real personality, and suddenly he gets a boost in his life. He becomes wealthy, he becomes famous. Now, the moral of the story is you stick to your principle. Even though the system or the society is against you, you never compromise on who you are. You do not compromise on your personality. The main philosophy in this book, it's extremely sophisticated and complicated. It's the philosophy of objectivism. Objectivism, when I read this book, it really astonished me. Because so far, being a Muslim, who was brought up in a Muslim family, I was taught to be selfless, to sacrifice yourself for the society, to give sadaqah, to give charity. But this book asked me to be selfish. I do not understand. Why should I be selfish? But the more I went deep and deep down into the philosophy, it actually made sense. Because if each and every unit, each and every individual of the society becomes selfish, the society, all in whole, becomes selfless. You understand? Partially, okay. You actually have to read this book to actually grasp the concept of objectivism. Now, another thing about this book is that Ayn Rand is an atheist. Ayn Rand is an atheist. She's against all major religions of the world. She's against Christianity, she's against Islam, she's against Hinduism. But I can proudly say that this is the most religious book I have ever read. Because in this book, there's a ritual of worshipping. Even though Ayn Rand is against worshipping, she's against rituals, she's against traditions, she's against religions, in this book, she worships materialism. She worships buildings. She worships egocentrism. She worships the self. It's beyond amazing if you think about it. I used to spend many sleepless nights actually thinking about the philosophy of objectivism and how if everyone became selfless, how it could actually be an advantage for the society. Now, the main important thing that I learned from this story is that I learned that I do not need to compromise with anyone. I do not need to compromise my principles to satisfy the ego of certain individuals. I don't need to compromise on my ideals, my thoughts, my principles to satisfy what the society says. Sadly today, you have the social media where you're always trying to build a different persona, a different personality in order to satisfy certain individuals. You can relate? In Instagram, you take a photo, you choose filters after filters after filters, you edit them, and then you post them. And then you post it. You're actually trying to create a different persona, a different personality. That is not who you are. You are not you. That is not who you are. Have you ever asked yourself who you really are? Am I the person who everyone else thinks? You know, the moment I saw you, I created an impression of you. Are you the person who you think that I think? Are you? Are you the person that you act in public? Are you? Are you the person who show yourself in social media, in Instagram, with all your cool bikes and cars and your awesome dresses? Is that the real you?
Yes.
Is that the real you? A big question you should be asking. I learned that, I don't know if this is the correct language or not, the principle of not giving a damn. The principle of not giving a damn. You know, every day we dress up, we put on coats, shoes, shorts to impress people. You are not independent. You are dependent, you are slaves. The moment you are able to say, by opening your mind, opening your heart, and opening your mouth wide and open and say to the world that I don't care who you think I am. I am what I think I am. The moment you are able to say that, you become truly independent. And that's how you become truly yourself. Thank you.